Everyone thought Elliot was dead. For 6 years, his name faded like an old newspaper headline. The missing posters were long gone. His school moved on. Neighbors no longer whispered about that boy from the greenhouse on Rua das Camelias in Curitiba. Even the police had quietly closed the case, but Elliot was never far. In fact, he was right there, inside that same greenhouse, alive. Hidden behind a false wall in the laundry room, there was a narrow door that no one ever opened. Behind it, a windowless room with cement walls, a mattress on the floor, and a rusted bucket in the corner. That was Elliot's world from the age of 4 to 10. And the one who put him there? Irene, his aunt, his legal guardian. After the car crash that killed Elliot's parents, Irene had stepped in like a hero, volunteering to take him in. She cried at the funeral, held him close in front of the judge, signed every paper with trembling hands. But her tears were fake. She never loved that boy. She never wanted a child. What she wanted was their house, their money, and their life insurance. Elliot was a problem. A little problem with big eyes, who reminded her of everything she didn't have. So one morning, just weeks after the funeral, she locked him in the room. No goodbye, no explanation. "You're going to stay here now," she told him. "Forever, if you make noise." He cried the first week, screamed until his throat gave out, but no one came, no one heard. The laundry machines, the thick walls, and the constant hum of life outside drowned him out. And Irene, she kept the lie going, told neighbors Elliot had been sent to live with distant cousins in Sao Paulo, told family he was better off. She even showed them fake letters she wrote pretending to be him. She had a system. She covered every track, except one: Clara. A young social worker barely out of university, Clara had visited the house during the early days after the accident. She'd seen Elliot. He'd clung to her that day. Something about his silence, the way he held her hand, it stayed with her. When Irene claimed he was gone, Clara's gut told her something was wrong, but she had no proof. And Irene, she was careful, polite, convincing. Still, every year on Elliot's birthday, Clara sent an anonymous message to the police. Just a tip, a gut feeling. They never took it seriously. 6 years passed. She moved on with her life. At least, she tried. Until one day, Clara drove past that house, just passing by. The same green paint, the same curtains, and something in her chest twisted. She parked the car, walked to the gate, rang the bell. Irene opened the door, older now, thinner, smiling too wide. "Clara, what a surprise." Clara forced a smile back. "I was just in the area." "Of course, come in." And she did. Inside, the house was too clean, too quiet. No toys, no signs of children, not even pictures. Irene offered her tea. Clara nodded. They sat in the kitchen, and for 20 minutes they danced around the subject. Then Clara said it. "I still think about him, you know. Elliot." Irene's smile didn't crack, but her hand tightened on the cup. "That boy," she said softly, "he was never meant for this world." Clara blinked. "What do you mean?" But before Irene could answer, a sound echoed, faint, low, but real. A knock. A single knock, like something falling, or someone trying. It came from the laundry room. Clara froze, and that's when everything started to unravel. Clara's breath caught. The sound had been subtle, almost dismissible. A thump, like a broom falling. But it wasn't that. She knew it wasn't that. There had been a rhythm to it, intentional, human. Her eyes drifted toward the hallway that led to the back of the house. She remembered the layout vaguely. The laundry room was at the end. There had been a storage cabinet back there too. Or had it always looked like that? Irene followed Clara's gaze, her smile faltering just slightly now. "Probably the cat," Irene said, standing up too quickly. "She knocks things over all the time." "You have a cat now?" Clara asked. Irene blinked. "Yes, a stray, comes and goes." But Clara knew. There was no cat. There were no scratches on the furniture, no food bowls, no litter box, nothing. And Irene was nervous now, Just for a second, just enough. Clara stood up. Do you mind if I use the restroom before I leave? Irene hesitated. Of course. Same place as always. Clara nodded and walked down the hall, but she didn't turn toward the bathroom. She went further. She moved slowly, quietly. Her fingers brushed the wall as she passed the old family photos, all outdated. No Elliot, no updates, just dust-covered memories that hadn't been touched in years. The laundry room door creaked open. It was dim, stale. The washing machine sat in the corner, unplugged. There was a long rack of coats and supplies, and a large cabinet against the far wall. Too large, too new. She stepped closer. It wasn't a cabinet, not really. It was built into the wall, painted the same color, flush with the corner, almost unnoticeable unless you were looking. Clara reached out and ran her hand along the edge. Her fingers found a seam, a small handle, not visible but there, concealed. A muffled sound came from behind it. She froze. It wasn't her imagination. Someone, or something, was inside. Her heart pounded as she glanced over her shoulder. Irene hadn't followed her. Not yet. Maybe she didn't suspect how much Clara had seen. Clara gripped the hidden handle and pulled. The door didn't open easily. It stuck. Years of paint and grime had sealed it, but with a hard yank it gave way, just a few inches at first. Cold, musty air spilled out. And then the smell hit her. Old sweat, mold, waste. Her stomach turned, but she pushed the door open wider. Inside, she saw movement. A figure in the shadows, small, thin, terrified. He backed into the corner, shielding his eyes from the faint light spilling in from behind her. Clara's voice broke. "Elliot?" He didn't answer. He didn't speak. He just stared at her, eyes wide, sunken, wild with confusion and fear. He was barely 10, but his body looked closer to 7, bones visible, hair matted, skin pale like paper. He was barefoot, wearing a filthy shirt that might have once been white. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "Oh my God!" Suddenly behind her, Irene's voice thundered. "What do you think you're doing?" Clara spun around. Irene stood at the door, her face red, contorted with rage. The kind of rage Clara had never seen, not even in her worst cases. It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear of being caught. It was fury, like something ancient and monstrous had been living beneath her skin all along. Clara stepped back, instinctively placing herself between Elliot and Irene. "He's alive," Clara said. "You locked him in there for 6 years. Irene took a step forward. "You don't understand what that boy is." "He's a child," Clara shouted. "You're sick." "You don't know what it was like," Irene snapped. "They left him to me. They left everything to me. He ruined it." Clara didn't move. Her hand reached for her phone, slowly. Irene noticed. "I wouldn't do that," she said coldly. Clara's fingers closed around the phone anyway. Her thumb slid toward the emergency dial. Then Elliot's voice, dry, hoarse, whispered from behind her for the first time in 6 years. "She has a gun." Clara's blood turned to ice. She turned her head slowly, eyes still locked on Irene. And Irene smiled again, but this time it was real, ugly, final. From under her sweater she pulled out a small revolver. Clara didn't hesitate. She slammed the door shut behind her, blocking the entrance to the hidden room with her body as she darted sideways. The gun fired once, deafening. The bullet cracked through the air, grazing the doorframe. Clara stumbled, but she kept running. Out the hallway, into the street, screaming for help. Behind her, Irene didn't follow. She didn't need to, because this wasn't over, not yet. The sirens cut through the quiet neighborhood like a scream in the dark. In less than 10 minutes, Rua das Camelias was a scene out of a crime drama. Flashing red and blue lights bouncing off windows, neighbors huddled at their fences, cell phones raised, whispering Elliot's name like it was a ghost resurrected. Clara stood outside the house, wrapped in a police blanket, her body shaking, from shock, from rage, from what she had just seen. Her ears still rang from the gunshot. Her mind raced with what she had to remember, what she had to explain. Every word mattered now. "He's inside," she kept repeating to the officers. "Back room. hidden behind a false wall in the laundry. And she has a weapon. The police didn't hesitate. Guns drawn, they breached the door and stormed the house. What they found was silence. Irene was gone. The back door had been left open. No sign of forced escape, no vehicle missing. She had vanished like smoke. The weapon was missing too, but the hidden room was just as Clara had said. And in that room, under a threadbare blanket, curled against the cold concrete floor, was Elliot. The medics moved fast. One look at him, and they knew. Severe malnutrition, muscle atrophy, extreme vitamin D deficiency. They had to carry him out on a stretcher. His legs weren't strong enough to hold him. Clara walked beside them, her hand hovering near his. She hadn't cried yet. She couldn't. Something inside her was still in survival mode. Elliot, for the first time, turned his head slightly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't leave me." "I won't," Clara said. "I promise." The hospital became Elliot's new world. Sterile white lights, soft voices, gentle nurses. For a child who had lived 6 years in silence, the sudden flood of attention overwhelmed him. He didn't speak much, barely ate at first. He flinched at every sudden noise, especially doors opening. But he watched. Every face, every movement, like he was studying a world he barely remembered. Doctors asked questions. Police interviewed him gently. Psychologists assessed him. They expected a blank slate, a boy too traumatized to recall much of anything. They were wrong. Elliot remembered everything. Dates, sounds, smells, the food Irene brought him, the exact number of days she left him without light, the coldest winter when his blanket wasn't enough, the one time he got sick and thought he would die. He remembered her voice through the wall, laughing at TV shows, talking on the phone like nothing was wrong. He remembered trying to count days by marking scratches on the floor until Irene took away the nail he used, and most of all he remembered writing, because hidden beneath the mattress, wrapped in layers of fabric, inside a plastic cereal box, was a notebook, half full, pages worn and smudged, his journal, written in shaky letters, with broken grammar and silent thoughts. It was how he survived, and now it was evidence. Detective Ruan Cardoso was assigned to the case 3 days after Elliot's rescue. A seasoned investigator from the Curitiba Missing Persons Unit, he'd read the boy's file 100 times over the years. He had always suspected something was off, but with no physical evidence, no witness, and Irene playing the role of grieving aunt, the case had gone cold like so many others. Now he held Elliot's notebook in his hands. He flipped through the pages carefully, his heart sinking with every line. "Day I don't know. She said I can't come out anymore. I want to see the sun again. I was good today. She didn't hit the door. I hate her. My name is Elliot. I'm still Elliot." It was raw, innocent, damning. Clara stood in his office across the desk, eyes burning. "I want her found," she said. "She can't disappear. She has to pay for what she did." Ruan nodded. "We're issuing a national warrant. She won't get far." "She's smart," Clara said. "She fooled everyone. Me, the system, the whole neighborhood." Ruan closed the journal gently. "Not you. You were the only one who didn't stop asking." But Irene wasn't running. Not exactly. She was hiding. And she had a plan. Somewhere far outside Curitiba, in a borrowed car under a fake name, she replayed the moment Clara found the door. She had underestimated that girl, that woman now. Clara had always been too curious. But Elliot, he was never supposed to remember. That journal, she didn't know it existed, and if the boy talked, everything would fall apart. She had made one mistake, and she wasn't going to let it be her last. In the hospital, Elliot sat up slowly, for the first time, without help. Clara was beside him again every day. She brought him warm soup, books, a small stuffed elephant. He didn't say much, but he didn't have to. He watched her, trusted her. And then one morning he whispered, "She used to leave the house for hours. Sometimes I heard her talking on the phone. I remember a name." Clara leaned in. "Whose name, Elliot?" He closed his eyes, focusing. Rodrigo. Clara frowned. Rodrigo who? I don't know, he said. But she always said, he'll take care of it. That was the first lead. And it wouldn't be the last. Because Elliot was done being silent. Rodrigo. The name echoed like a puzzle piece falling into place, except no one knew where it fit. Clara wrote it down immediately, even though she knew it might be a dead end. She didn't show it on her face, but her heart was pounding. A name meant connection. A name meant trail, and with Elliot remembering more each day, that trail was getting warmer. Detective Ruan met her that afternoon in the hospital cafeteria, eyes weary, tie loosened, coffee untouched. I got your message, he said, sitting across from her. What's this about a Rodrigo? Clara slid the paper over. Elliot remembers her saying it. He'll take care of it. That's all he's got for now. Ruan sighed. Rodrigo is one of the most common names in the country. I know, she said. But it's something, and Elliot's not guessing. He's certain. Ruan leaned back, thinking. She would have needed help. Someone to forge paperwork, get supplies, maybe keep people off her back. She lived in that house without drawing attention for 6 years, Clara added. You really think she pulled that off alone? Ruan's eyes narrowed. I'll start digging. Back at the hospital, Elliot sat on his bed, staring at the tray of food untouched in front of him. He was eating more now, slowly rebuilding his strength, but some days were harder than others. That day, his eyes were heavy, mind distant. Clara knocked once before entering. Hey, champion. Elliot looked up. He didn't smile, but he gave a small nod. I brought you something, she said, placing a soft-covered notebook in front of him. Same kind as the one you had in the room. Thought maybe you'd like to keep writing. He didn't answer at first. Then after a long silence, he whispered, They took it. No, Clara said gently. We have it. The police are using it to help find Irene. But this one is just yours. Only yours. He ran his fingers across the cover slowly. Can I write anything I want? Anything. Elliot opened it to the first page, picked up the pencil she had brought, and wrote one word. Survived. Meanwhile, Ruan was pulling favors. Late-night calls, database searches, quiet inquiries. The name Rodrigo churned up dozens of suspects, but one in particular stood out. Rodrigo Pascual, 42 years old, former social services clerk. Fired 7 years ago after a quiet investigation into falsified documents. Never charged, vanished off the grid. But his last known residence? 2 blocks from Irene's house. That was no coincidence. Ruan called Clara immediately. We might have something. He helped her disappear Elliot from the system. That's how she got away with it. Clara's voice sharpened. Can you find him? I'm trying. He hasn't used his name in years. But get this, a pharmacy in San Jose dos Pinhais ran a prescription through the system 2 weeks ago under an alias. Guess who picked it up? Clara stood up, heart racing. Rodrigo, Ruan confirmed. We're sending units. If he's there, we'll find him. That same night, Elliot had a nightmare. In his dream, the walls were closing in again. The light wouldn't come on. The bucket in the corner had spilled, and Irene was behind the door, whispering the same sentence over and over. You don't exist. You don't exist. He woke up screaming. It took 3 nurses and Clara to calm him down. He clutched her like his life depended on it, tears running silently down his face. I don't want to go back, he choked. You're never going back, Clara said, holding him tight. You're safe now, I promise. But across the city, in a dark apartment above a mechanic shop, Rodrigo wasn't sleeping. He was watching the news. Elliot's face was everywhere now. The miracle child, the one who was found. Rodrigo turned the volume up, chewing on a hangnail, sweat on his brow. He thought Irene was gone, that she'd run far, that she'd take the secret with her. But now, the boy was talking. And Rodrigo knew something that hadn't made the news yet. He knew where Irene really was, and if the police got to him before she did, he was dead. By morning, the police raided the apartment. Empty. Rodrigo was gone, but he left behind a clue. In the trash, Under a half-eaten sandwich and a crumpled beer can was a bus ticket stub. One way, to Joinville, Santa Catarina. Clara stared at the name when Ruan showed her the photo. That's where she was born. Exactly, he said. She's going home, or hiding there. Either way, it's our best lead. Let me go with you, Clara said. Ruan shook his head. Absolutely not. She trusts me. Elliot does. He remembers through me. Ruan hesitated. If anything goes wrong, it won't. After a long silence, he gave in. Pack light. We leave at dawn. Back in the hospital, Elliot sat at the window, the sun warming his face. He had been locked away for 2,190 days. Now, for the first time, he could feel light again, and somehow, he knew Irene wasn't finished. Because deep down, he remembered something else. Something darker, something he hadn't told Clara yet. Not about the room, not about the lies, but about what Irene did before she locked the door for the first time. Elliot hadn't told anyone the full story, not yet. Not because he didn't remember, but because he remembered too much. Some memories came back in broken images, others in complete, terrifying detail. But there was one moment he had kept buried, even from Clara, a moment that didn't make sense at the time. But now, with Irene out there, it felt like a ticking time bomb inside his chest. He was 6 years old when it happened, 2 years into captivity. That night Irene didn't bring him food. She didn't bring water either. Instead, she opened the door, something she almost never did, and tossed a black garbage bag inside. No noise, she said. You didn't see anything. Then she slammed the door. Elliot remembered the smell, sharp, metallic, like iron and bleach. His small hands trembled as he crawled toward the bag in the dark. He didn't open it all the way, but the zipper on the side had come undone. What he saw inside haunted him for years. A woman's shoe, blood, a necklace with a tiny silver cross. He didn't know who the woman was, but he remembered one thing clearly. Irene was crying. And then she started laughing. 2 days later, Ruan and Clara arrived in Joinville. They had no confirmed sightings of Irene, but a quiet tip came through from a retired bus driver who recognized Rodrigo from an old missing persons bulletin. He said the man had gotten off at the central terminal, looking around like he didn't know where to go next. That was 3 days ago. Joinville was smaller than Curitiba, but it sprawled. Quiet neighborhoods, warehouses near the river, cheap motels that didn't ask questions. Ruan spread a map across the motel bed, marking every location connected to Irene's past. Her childhood home, an abandoned textile factory where her father once worked, and a church she was known to visit in her teens. She's sentimental, Clara said, tracing her finger across the city grid. She ran, yes, but she'll hide somewhere that feels safe. Ruan looked at her. And Rodrigo. Clara's jaw tightened. He's with her, or on his way to her. They both knew what that meant. Rodrigo wasn't just a co-conspirator, he was a witness, and Irene couldn't risk that. Meanwhile, back in the hospital, Elliot was awake before dawn. His bones ached less now. He could stand on his own for short periods. But sleep was still the enemy. That night, the dream came again. The bag, the shoe, the smell. He couldn't hold it in anymore. When the nurse came in to check on him, Elliot asked for Clara. She's not here today, the nurse said kindly. She's traveling, Elliot's voice shook. Please, I need to talk to someone. An hour later, Elliot sat across from a child psychologist named Dr. Vanessa Gomes. She was patient, calm. She didn't push. Elliot gripped the notebook Clara had given him. He flipped to a new page and began to draw. Not words this time, shapes, a bag, a shoe, a necklace. Vanessa watched silently. Then Elliot said, I think she killed someone. Vanessa's heart dropped. Can you tell me what makes you think that? She brought something into the room one night. A bag. I saw blood and jewelry. Did you see a body? He shook his head. No, just part of it. Vanessa's voice softened. Do you remember anything else? What did she say? Elliot looked down. His next words chilled her. She said, "If you ever tell, you'll end up just like her." In Joinville, Clara's phone rang as she and Ruan left the church Irene once attended. She answered on speaker. It was Dr. Vanessa. Clara listened in silence as she explained what Elliot had just told her. Ruan's expression darkened immediately. "We need to cross-reference missing persons reports in Curitiba from 6 years ago," he said. "Women who fit that timeline. She might have killed someone to cover up her tracks. Maybe someone who suspected something." Clara looked pale. Or someone who was helping. They didn't know yet, but Elliot had just opened a new chapter in the case. One that went beyond kidnapping. This was now a murder investigation. That evening, Rodrigo finally made contact, not with the police, not with Clara, but with a man in a payphone near the Joinville bus station, using a fake name and speaking in low, rapid Portuguese. "She knows I'm here," he said into the receiver. "You were supposed to keep her off my trail." The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. "You didn't clean up like you said you would." Rodrigo was sweating. "I'm not going to jail for her, you hear me? I did what she asked." I kept my mouth shut. A pause. Then the voice replied, "Then keep it shut." Click. The line went dead. Rodrigo turned, about to step out into the street. That's when he saw her, Irene, standing across the road, dressed in grey, holding a bag and smiling. Rodrigo ran. He didn't get far. Rodrigo's body was found just after sunrise. He was floating face down in the Rio Cachoeira, wedged between two rocks beneath the old pedestrian bridge on the north side of Joinville. No wallet, no phone, no ID. But Ruan knew it was him the moment he saw the photo sent by the forensics team. "Confirmed?" Clara asked, her voice hollow over the phone. "Confirmed," Ruan said. "Broken neck, no signs of a struggle. Looks like he was pushed, caught off guard." Clara's throat tightened. "She got to him." "Yeah," Ruan muttered. "She's tying up loose ends." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Ruan said, "We're running out of time." Back in Curitiba, Elliot was staring at a photo. "Doctor, Vanessa had brought a printed sheet with 10 images of missing women from the last 10 years, narrowed down by age, location, and the time frame he remembered. Women who had vanished around the time Irene locked him away. Most were strangers, but one wasn't. "She came to the house once," Elliot said, pointing with a shaking finger. "Are you sure?" Vanessa asked. Elliot nodded. "She talked to Irene. They argued. I heard yelling. The next day, the bag was there." The woman in the photo was Marina Alves, a 33-year-old church volunteer who went missing in early 2019. She had worked with grief support groups after losing her own son and had briefly been assigned to help with Elliot's case after his parents died. It made sense. Marina had gotten too close, and Irene made her disappear. Clara met with Marina's sister that afternoon. Her name was Paula. She hadn't spoken to anyone from the police in over 3 years. They had told her Marina likely ran away, overwhelmed with grief. When Clara showed her the journal entry Elliot had written, Paula broke down. "She wouldn't have run," Paula whispered. "She was trying to adopt. She was starting over. She was strong." Clara placed a hand on hers. "We believe she was murdered by Irene, and we believe Elliot saw part of it." Tears filled Paula's eyes. "Can you prove it?" "We will," Clara said. "I swear it." In Joinville, Ruan was running out of leads. No known relatives left, no property in her name, no registered vehicles. But then, while reviewing a list of utilities under aliases used by Rodrigo, one hit caught his attention. A rented storage unit on the outskirts of the city, paid in cash, registered under a fake name Rodrigo had used before. Ruan and Clara got there just after dark. The area was quiet, too quiet. Long rows of metal storage doors, flickering security lights, the sound of dogs barking in the distance. Unit number 37. Ruan held his gun low as he approached. Clara stayed behind, heart racing. The lock was broken. Ruan opened the door slowly. Inside it was empty, almost. A single chair sat in the middle of the unit, and on it, a cassette tape recorder. Ruan pressed play. Irene's voice filled the silence. "You're persistent, Clara. I always liked that about you." Clara's blood ran cold. "You should have walked away. You had your life, a job, a future. But you couldn't let it go, could you? You just had to play hero." There was a long pause on the tape. Then her voice returned, darker now. "Elliot was never supposed to live this long. You're both making a mess. And now I have to clean it." Click. The tape stopped. They moved Elliot into a secure unit at a private pediatric clinic the next morning. Police were posted outside the door. Cameras were installed. Every visitor was screened. Clara stayed by his side. "You're not safe," she told him. "Not yet, but we're close." Elliot didn't cry, didn't tremble. He just asked, "Will she come for me?" Clara looked him in the eyes. "Yes." "Then I need to tell you something else," he said. She leaned in. Elliot looked down at his notebook and turned to a new page. "I think she had help from more than just Rodrigo." Clara's heart skipped. "Who?" "I don't know his name," Elliot said, "but he came once, in a uniform, with a badge." Clara's mind started racing. "A cop? A police officer?" she asked carefully. Elliot nodded. "He gave her papers. Said he fixed it for her." Clara stood up slowly, her voice shaking now. "Do you remember what he looked like?" Elliot thought for a second, then said the words that shattered everything. "He looked like the man on TV, the one who came to visit after they found me, the man you called Ruan." Clara froze. Everything inside her stopped. "No," she whispered, but Elliot nodded again, certain now. "Yes, that's him." The room tilted. Clara gripped the edge of Elliot's bed as his words settled into the air like poison. Every memory of the past few days replayed in her head. The long car rides with Ruan, the shared silence, the moments when his answers came too fast, too ready, too clean. She had trusted him. He was supposed to be the one person helping her get Elliot justice, and now the boy, the only one who had seen it all, was saying the unthinkable. Ruan wasn't just investigating the case. He might have been part of it. Clara left Elliot's room in a daze. She didn't speak to the officers outside, didn't call anyone. She walked fast, straight down the hallway, out the clinic doors, around the building to the back where no cameras were pointed, and dialed a private number. It rang twice. "Dr. Vanessa Gomes speaking." "It's Clara." Her voice cracked. "I need help." An hour later, they met at a small cafe across the street from the clinic. Clara handed over a folded piece of paper with everything Elliot had said. Dr. Vanessa read it carefully, her eyes narrowing with each line. "This can't be ignored," Vanessa said firmly. "You have to report it." Clara shook her head. "I can't. If Ruan's really involved, going through official channels could tip him off." "So what's the plan?" Clara leaned forward. "We need to trap him." That night, Ruan called Clara. He sounded calm, normal, as if nothing had changed. "Still no word on Irene," he said. "We'll widen the search in the morning. Joinville was a bust." Clara forced her voice to stay neutral. Elliot remembered something else. A pause. "Oh?" Clara let the silence hang just long enough to make him lean in. "Something about someone helping Irene, someone with a badge." Ruan laughed, and too quickly. "Could have been a city cop, someone retired. She had time to make friends." "Maybe," Clara replied, flat. "Or maybe it's someone still active." Ruan didn't respond. "Anyway," she added, "I'll be at the clinic early tomorrow. The psychologist wants another session with Elliot." "I'll meet you there," he said, then hung up. By morning, the trap was set. Clara had already arranged it with Vanessa and a small internal affairs officer she trusted from her social work network. Inspector Delio Marcondes. No uniform, no visible badge, just a quiet presence hidden in the background of the clinic. Clara arrived early and waited. So did Elliot. The boy had been briefed, but Clara made one promise before it all began. "You don't have to say a word if you're scared. We'll handle it." Elliot looked up at her and nodded once. "I'm not scared," he said. "Not anymore." Ruan entered the clinic at exactly 9:05. He was carrying a file folder and wearing the same relaxed confidence he always had. He waved to the officers at the door, flashed his badge, smiled at the nurse behind the desk. Clara stood by the hallway, pretending to check her messages. "Morning," he said. "How's our miracle boy?" Clara forced a smile. "Awake, waiting for you." Ruan's eyes narrowed slightly. "For me? You said you'd stop by." "Right," he said, adjusting his tone. "Of course." She led him down the hall, but not to Elliot's room, to the observation suite next to it. A small room used for interviews and evaluations with a two-way mirror. Inside, Vanessa and Elliot were seated quietly. Ruan stepped in, and Clara followed, closing the door. "Elliot," Ruan said warmly. "How are you feeling, buddy?" Elliot looked at him but didn't speak. Ruan crouched to his level. "You remember me, right?" Silence. Then slowly, Elliot reached for the notebook on the table and turned it around. One word was written in shaky pencil. "Liar." Ruan blinked. Clara's voice cut through the air behind him. "He remembers you, Ruan. From the house, from before. You brought Irene documents, papers. You told her he didn't exist anymore." Ruan stood up slowly. "Clara, what the hell are you saying?" "I'm saying," she said, stepping forward, "you were in on it. You helped her disappear him. You protected her, maybe because she had something on you, or maybe you were getting something out of it." Ruan's face twisted, part fury, part fear. "You don't have proof." "We don't need proof," said a voice from behind the glass. And then the mirror door opened. Inspector Delio stepped in, flanked by two plainclothes agents. "Ruan Machado," he said, pulling out a folded paper. "You are under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and aiding in the unlawful imprisonment of a minor." Ruan turned to Clara, his jaw clenched. "You set me up!" Clara stepped in front of Elliot, her voice ice cold. "No, you set yourself up. You thought no one would listen to a little boy, but I did." As the agents cuffed him, Ruan looked at Elliot one last time. "You don't understand," he spat. "She's not done." And then he was gone. Later that evening, Clara sat with Elliot as the sun dipped behind the trees outside the clinic window. He was quiet, chewing the corner of his pencil. "I was right," he said finally. "About him." "You were," Clara said. "And now he can't hurt anyone else." Elliot looked at her. "But she's still out there." Clara nodded slowly. "We'll find her." Elliot whispered something then, so soft she barely caught it. "She always said, 'The end is only when I say it's the end.'" Clara felt her skin crawl, because she knew what he meant. Irene wasn't running anymore. She was planning her return. It began with a letter, no return address, no stamps, just a plain white envelope slipped under the clinic's back entrance sometime after midnight. It was found by a janitor during the morning cleaning round, and by noon it was in Clara's hands. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed, cold. "You should have let him disappear. You don't know what you've awakened. You think he remembers everything, but I remember more. Tick-tock." As Clara stood frozen, reading it again, and again. It wasn't a threat. Not just that. It was a promise, a game. And Irene had just made her move. Security around Elliot was tightened immediately. 2 armed officers posted at his door, cameras monitored in real time, access to the building limited to vetted staff only. Still, Clara felt the pressure in her chest growing. Irene was slipping through the cracks, leaving trails, taunting them. She sat with Inspector Delio later that afternoon, going over every piece of evidence again, hoping something would click. "The way she's writing, it's not impulsive," Clara said. "She's enjoying this. She's not scared, she's ahead." Delio nodded, tapping the letter thoughtfully. "She thinks she still has control. That tells me one thing." Clara raised her eyes. "She's watching us." That night, as Elliot slept, Clara stayed in the observation room beside his suite, staring at the security feed. The boy had made so much progress in just a few weeks. He was walking more, speaking more. He'd even started drawing detailed floor plans of the house, room by room, helping the investigators reconstruct Irene's setup down to the smallest hiding place. But even as he healed, She felt it, that something was coming. At 3 in the morning, a nurse brought her coffee. "I heard about the letter," the woman whispered. "He must be terrified." Clara glanced through the glass. Elliot was curled up, eyes closed, hugging the stuffed elephant she'd brought him. "He's stronger than he looks." At dawn, Elliot woke screaming. Clara burst into the room. He was soaked in sweat, trembling, eyes wide with terror. "She was here," he cried, "in the dream, but it wasn't a dream." Clara knelt beside him. "It's okay. You're safe." "No," he insisted, gripping her arm. "She said my name. She was whispering. I heard her." Clara's stomach dropped. "What did she say?" Elliot's voice cracked. "It's almost your birthday, and I always keep my promises." Elliot would turn 11 in 5 days. It hit Clara hard. The date meant something. She dug back through her notes, Elliot's journal, the investigation timeline. That's when she saw it. Irene's pattern. Every year, on Elliot's birthday, she disappeared for a full day from her regular activities. No phone calls, no bank transactions, no sightings. It had been dismissed before as coincidence, but now Clara saw it differently. "She always marked it," Clara told Delio the next morning. "It wasn't just about taking him, it was about owning him. Every birthday was a ritual." Delio ran a hand through his hair. "You think she's planning something for this one?" Clara nodded. "I think she's planning to end it." Across town, in a run-down apartment above a closed bakery, Irene was preparing. Her hair was shorter now, dyed dark, her body thinner, gaunter. But her eyes were the same, sharp, hollow, dead. She laid out a small photo on the table. Elliot at 4 years old, smiling before the funeral. Next to it, a knife, not new, familiar, worn. She stared at the image for a long time. "You were mine," she said softly, "and they took you." She closed her eyes, but only for a second, because today she had work to do. At the clinic, Clara was pulled into a staff meeting, a briefing to coordinate full lockdown for Elliot's protection. But her mind wasn't on the checklist. It was on one detail she couldn't shake. The night shift nurse, a woman named Luciana. She'd started working 3 weeks ago, cleared the background check, soft-spoken, kept to herself. But Clara remembered something strange. Luciana had once asked Elliot a question when she thought no one was listening. "Do you miss the quiet?" Elliot hadn't answered at the time. Now it chilled Clara to the bone. She rushed out of the meeting, sprinting through the hallway, down the back stairs to the clinic's lower floor, where Luciana was supposed to be filing medication logs. She wasn't there. "Where's Nurse Luciana?" Clara demanded from a passing orderly. He blinked. "She didn't clock in today." Clara's voice turned sharp. "When was her last shift?" "Last night," he said. "She left around 3. The same time Elliot had the nightmare." Clara turned and ran. Elliot was awake, sitting in bed, staring out the window. Clara entered his room fast, heart pounding. "Did Luciana talk to you?" "The night nurse." Elliot looked down. "She told me to go back to sleep," he whispered. "She said I'd see the stars soon." Clara's blood ran cold. Outside, an unmarked white van passed slowly in front of the clinic. She bolted to the window, too late to catch the plate, but something inside her clicked. She wasn't trying to sneak in. Irene was preparing to take him back. They were too late. By the time Clara and Inspector Delio reviewed the night shift logs, cross-checked surveillance footage, and traced the van, Irene was already gone. Disguised as Luciana for over 3 weeks, she had walked the clinic hallways unnoticed, slipping through every layer of security with forged IDs and a nurse's uniform. The real Luciana, a young woman with no criminal record, was found unconscious in her own home, drugged and unharmed, her clothes and credentials stolen. It had all been orchestrated perfectly. The threat wasn't coming. It had been inside the clinic for weeks. Clara sat across from Elliot that morning, shaking. She was here. Elliot didn't speak. He was pale, curled into himself. Something inside him had changed overnight, like a part of him had shut off again. "She's not going to stop," he whispered. I don't know how, but she'll come for me. Clara reached for his hand. She doesn't own you anymore. He looked up, eyes filled with something rawer than fear, certainty. She thinks she does. Every police unit in Paraná was alerted. Roadblocks were set up. Orders were notified. Irene's face, digitally reconstructed and aged, was plastered across national news outlets. But Clara knew Irene wouldn't run far, not before finishing what she started, because this wasn't about escape. It was about control, and Elliot's birthday was now 4 days away. That same day, a tip came in from a truck driver traveling along BR 376 near the border of Santa Catarina. He reported seeing a woman matching Irene's description pulling over in a white van, arguing with someone on a payphone. She was wearing a nurse's uniform under a jacket and had a boy in the passenger seat, thin, pale, eyes down. The message reached Clara by phone. She couldn't breathe. "She has him," she asked Delio. "We don't know yet. Could have been someone else, but it fits." They mobilized instantly. Patrol cars, drones, helicopter support. Clara was on the next chopper out with Delio, her hands trembling the whole flight. She could barely think. Not Elliot, not again. But when they found the van, abandoned in a wooded area off the highway, Elliot wasn't there. No sign of him. Just a trail of small footprints leading into the trees, and a map taped to the dashboard. It was hand-drawn, childlike. A single line drawn from Curitiba to a small dot labeled with a name that made Clara's stomach drop. Cambuquira, a small town in Minas Gerais. Population barely 12,000. It meant nothing to the investigators, but it meant everything to Clara. Because that was where Elliot's parents had taken him once, 2 weeks before the accident, the last trip they ever made together, a place of memory, and now, maybe, a place of reckoning. Meanwhile, in a secluded farmhouse outside Cambuquira, Elliot sat in a dark room. But it wasn't like before. This time there were windows. This time the door was unlocked. But he didn't run. Not yet. Irene sat across from him at a small table, humming to herself as she poured soup into a bowl. "You're quiet," she said softly, without looking at him, "just like you used to be." Elliot didn't respond. She placed the bowl in front of him. "I made your favorite, tomato." He stared at it. She leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "You're so big now." "But still mine." Elliot's voice was hoarse. "You lied to me." Irene's smile faded. "I protected you," she said. "The world forgot you. I didn't. You locked me in a room because they wanted to take you, use you, but I kept you safe. You were never supposed to leave." Elliot looked her in the eyes. "I never belonged to you." That night, Clara and Delio arrived in Cambuquira. There were no hotels, no motels, just a local inn and a church. They spoke with residents, showed photos, asked questions, and finally an old farmer remembered something. A woman, traveling alone, renting a house out in the hills, paid in cash, said she was caring for a sick nephew. They found the house near the edge of the forest. No neighbors, no lights. A rusted car parked outside. Clara didn't wait for backup. She ran, Delio behind her. Inside, Elliot heard something he hadn't heard in a long time. Footsteps running toward him. Irene turned, confused. Clara burst through the door. "Elliot!" He stood. Irene grabbed his arm. Clara didn't stop. "Let him go!" Irene pulled Elliot back, her other hand reaching for something beneath her coat. A knife. Clara drew her weapon, just as Delio appeared behind her, shouting orders. But Irene didn't listen. "You took him from me," she screamed. "He was never yours," Clara shouted back. Then a sound cut through the chaos. Not a gunshot, not a scream, a whisper from Elliot. "Stop!" Everyone froze. Irene blinked. Elliot pulled away from her hand. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," he said. "You're not in control. I am." And then, for the first time, he stepped behind Clara. Irene's hand trembled. Her face collapsed. Something in her finally broke. She dropped the knife and sank to her knees. The arrest was quiet. Irene didn't scream, didn't resist. The woman who had haunted a child's every breath for 6 years now sat in the back of a patrol car, staring out the window, not saying a word. Her silence wasn't remorse, it was hollow, a void, like whatever darkness had fueled her for so long had finally burned itself out. Elliot watched as the car disappeared down the dirt road, then turned back toward Clara. He looked smaller in that moment, as if finally allowing the weight of everything to settle on his thin shoulders. He didn't cry. Neither did Clara. They didn't need to. The next few days blurred. Media frenzy erupted across the country. Headlines screamed, "Boy missing for 6 years helps capture abuser." Social worker cracks cold case with journal of the victim. Hidden in plain sight, the Elliot Fernandez story. But behind the cameras and microphones, there was a quieter truth. Elliot wasn't a headline. He was a boy still healing, still learning what freedom meant. Irene faced multiple charges: kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and the murder of Marina Alves, the kind woman who had tried to uncover the truth years earlier, only to vanish into Irene's cover-up. Her trial gripped the nation. But the evidence was overwhelming, especially Elliot's testimony, delivered via recorded video in a calm, precise tone that left the courtroom in silence. Her sentence was 45 years in prison, no possibility of parole. Even then, Clara knew. Irene hadn't been acting alone for all those years. Rodrigo had helped, Ruan had covered it up, others had turned blind eyes. But justice, at least part of it, had finally come. Clara never left Elliot's side. After the trial, she petitioned to become his legal guardian, not out of obligation, not out of pity, but because they had found each other in a place no one else had. She had been the only adult who never stopped asking questions, and he had been the child who never truly stopped hoping someone would find him. It wasn't easy. The nightmares still came. He flinched at loud noises, crowds overwhelmed him, but he also began to laugh again, to draw, to play, and to speak in full sentences with people he trusted. He enrolled in a private recovery-focused school. Therapists worked closely with him, helping rebuild what had been taken, and every night Clara read to him until he fell asleep. Every night he asked for the same story, his own. Not the version in the newspapers, not the one written in court reports, but the one he remembered, with truth, with pain, with survival, and now, with peace. On his 12th birthday, a small group gathered at a park just outside Curitiba. It was a simple celebration: cake, music, a few friends he had made at school. No cameras, no reporters, just life. Elliot stood quietly watching the sunset as Clara approached from behind. "Hey," she said softly. "You okay?" He nodded. "Today feels real," he said. Clara smiled. "That's because it is." He turned to her. "Do you think one day I'll stop remembering?" Clara knelt beside him. "I hope not," she said, "because you remembering is what saved you. It's what helped everyone finally listen." He looked back at the sky. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "I'm not afraid of the dark anymore." And for the first time in his life, he meant it.